in recent years, companies have been cramming all sorts of stuff into pedal, and Walrus Audio recently collaborated with Yvette Young for this. It's the Qi Etherealizer. I believe that's how it's pronounced. For the record, I bought this from Sweetwater with my own money. This video is in no way sponsored by Sweetwater or Walrus Audio or Yvette Young. This is the typical YouTuber thing. If you like the channel, please hit the subscribe button. The bell icon will let you know when I put up a new video. I've noticed that over like 97 to 98% of the viewers on this page aren't subscribers. I don't know if I'm showing up in your feeds on a regular basis based off of the YouTube algorithm, but if you subscribe, you'll be sure not to miss out on any future videos. And if you like this video, give it the thumbs up. And if you want to share this, there's a button for that as well. Okay, so let's go over this very briefly here. So inside here, we have three pretty typical effects. We have chorus, we have a delay, and a reverb. And they're pretty basic, and I shouldn't say basic, they're not really basic, but they're tried and true time-based effects that we use in the guitar application. But there's also this other aspect that's coming in right here. It's called a granular effect. And simply put, a granular effect is basically processing that breaks down the audio signal into small segments or grains to create new sounds. They call this technique granular synthesis. And it's like slicing and dicing your sound and then regenerating it back at you, especially when you apply it with things like delays and reverbs and modulations. It can really get very soundscapey or like a soundtrack type of thing. Very, very cool. There are 5 playback modes of that granular effect that dictate the different ways the grain samples come out. There's a 1x, which is the normal regeneration of speed and things like that. There's a x2, sorry, there's x1, which is normal. X2, which is double speed and it goes up an octave. There's a x.5 where it's half speed, repeat, and down 1 octave. And then there's a reverse playback mode as well. And then you can get even crazier. There's a randomized combination of the other previous 4 modes, just choosing it as it wants to. This is an actual digital system. It's got a DSP in here, so it can really handle a lot of processing. There's also a freeze function in here that really can create textures that are almost so un-guitar-like, but it's quite inspiring. In fact, halfway through that intro little bit I kicked on the freeze function just so I could kind of play along to it. The delays can be tailored in here as well. They can be used for tap tempo as well, and there's also an oscillation on the foot switch, so you can kind of bring that function in there where it regenerates and oscillates in there. There are 3 presets in here as well, and the stock ones were developed by Yvette Young. And I'll say this, I'm a big chorus guy. This is also a really great chorus. They got very simple, very easy to use. I gotta tell you though, overall, when I got this pedal, I was very excited by it, and I really wish I could do a demo of what every aspect of this combination of effects can offer. But every time I do a deep dive into it, something new comes out of it. Something new comes out of me as a player. Like I said, I'm a pretty standard guitarist like myself. You could find all sorts of new avenues of wonder very easily in here without a lot of tweaking. I'm going to say this, there's a lot in here, and I suggest checking out as many other videos as you can if you're interested in this pedal or interested in this kind of thing, because what Yvette Young gets out of this is miles away from what I get out of it, obviously. And I'm sure what other players you see, they'll extract different things from this as well. It's probably something that is really wildly different across the board. The chorus, delay, and the reverb effects, they're fairly straightforward in functionality. They are very simple and easy to use, as you would expect from a typical individual style of stomp box in that kind of setting. But combining the abilities of these things in one unit with the granular effect really makes this kind of a powerhouse. And we'll go even a step further. These effects also can be run in parallel or in series, which is a pretty unique thing. I find that depending on what I'm going for, depending on the setup for layering, for like when you want to put in those really lush sounds, the series setup works quite well because it's basically affecting one thing, like the chorus is affected, then that chorus signal is then delayed, and then the chorus signal is then processed granularly, and then that chorus delayed and granular signal then gets reverb. It really does create a wonderful pad-like type settings. Now, the other way you can do it is running parallel. Parallel is great because you basically can have, you get your chorus signal, but there's still going to be a bit of a dry signal there. And then that dry signal is going to get processed on its own. And the same thing with the granular and the reverb, that you're basically running them individually, like you would maybe like on an aux send of a mixer in a control room. So they're not all kind of adding up on each other. It gives you a little bit more clarity. In certain settings, depending on what you're going for, it might work for what you're doing, but you can kind of choose between the two. And that's quite nice. It's definitely, your mileage may vary type of deal. I'm not going to go into each individual effect and all the options as we go through them, because that video would be super long. And this is just like I don't know how I could do a video diving into all this stuff and be coherent, because there's a lot inside here. And I've been playing around with it. And like I said, every time I grab it and plug it in, I'm coming up with something new. So I'm constantly rediscovering this, but I want to share it with you. I find it quite inspiring, and hopefully maybe something you guys could do as well. There's stereo inputs and outputs. So you really do get to create a very widescreen type of sound. In fact, if there's a reason to make a stereo rig, it's because of this pedal. I ran this in mono. I've been running it in mono all the way through for me just playing around with it, but I'm already thinking of upgrading to some sort of stereo rig to really tap into that. This also, it comes in two finish options. This is the cream on black version that I got. There's also like a terracotta style with some graphics that's kind of in there as well too. I went with this because while it's really cool to have, I like the artwork that's coming on pedals is always very cool, and the colors and graphics are getting very wild. But I find that this is a lot easier to read, whether in a dark setting or even just the fact it's easier to navigate overall. Just there's other things in the way, and I wear glasses. Sometimes it's a little difficult if you're, depending on the angle, make sure you're tweaking the right knobs. I got the Qi Etherealizer because I was finding some very interesting ambient type pedals from other companies like Collision Devices and Hologram, but I was a bit unnerved with some of the perceived complexity, and I might not want to deep dive into stuff that I might not connect with and use in a practical sense. This seemed like a really good way to dip my toes into some new waters without getting soaked or waterlogged. So that's how I really have to say it. This has really got something where it brings a lot of expansiveness without having to, worry about, am I ever going to use this thing? I think I'm going to, and here's how I am using it. I like the idea of using this also with a simple chorus and delay. You can have those set up there without the granular effect, where it just kind of works like the three favorite effects I like. If you want to get like a police sound or maybe like an Alex Lifeson type of sound with those three effects, that's great. And I can get something as simple as that right out of this. And it works wonderfully, just like treating it like a chorus, a delay, and a reverb that you would use. Like, typical Boss, 3 different Boss pedals you would have lined up, but they're all in one box right here. And I've used it for that a little bit. It's great to be able to do that. And you can go even crazier into more expansive stuff as you've heard here. I'm thinking of basically pairing this with just a really nice drive pedal, because this would make a really powerful setup on a small pedal board. It would be very simple just to have that plus a couple drives, like a drive pedal and a boost. And that's pretty much like 90% of the sounds I would be trying to generate. And with a preset mode where you could have a version that would just have that, typical chorus reverb delay that you use on typical rock songs, yeah, that'd be perfect. And then being able to have a couple of other preset modes that you could really expand and go a little further with, I really like that as well. The grain function is still something I'm sorting out. I'm not really an ambient guitarist, but this is kind of turning out to be the gateway drug for that. I'm finding a lot of uses for it musically, and I'll say it's really quite fun to these kind of like Christopher Nolan movie style soundscapes on my own. And I'm finding more ways of bringing that into a practical sense of playing and composing. So I'm kind of figuring it out right now, and it's quite promising. I haven't run into anything that's kind of been like a bottleneck or some sort of guardrail keeping me from really finding this out. So there really hasn't been any limitations. I know this is not a super in-depth user guide. I get that. I just wanted to share this with you and see if any of you, the viewers, have had experience with one of these, or maybe even one of the other similar devices by other companies, like I said, like Collision Devices or Hologram. I'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comment section below with your experiences. I'd love to hear from you. Anyways, that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Take care.